Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz, and this is another episode of The Next Level. I want to introduce my co-host, Melissa Fancy.
Hello, everybody.
And I know many of you are coming back week after week. We appreciate it. If you're brand new, what we do is Melissa and I discuss the most recent guest interview of the morning, and we suss out a few key topics and translate them into specific tactical strategies you can use to bring your business to the next level. And this is such a good one with Phil. But before we get there, Melissa, you've got anything for us?
Oh, you guys, we are in Cabo right now for Engage Wedding Business Summits, and we are just so excited. It is fantastic to be here with all of our friends, and we are going to be posting so much this week on our Instagram. Make sure you're following us at Wedding Biz Show.
I want to give you a chance to write in and let me know who you would like me to have on the show who I haven't interviewed yet. And if there are any other topics you would love me to cover, if you don't really have any suggestions, even for me to know what it is that you enjoy as far as the regular interviews and the next level, please let me know. I'm going to give you my personal email and I will get back to every single person. Might take me a few days, so be patient. My email address is andy@theweddingbiz.com. Again, andy@theweddingbiz.com. So today's guest is Phil Van Norstrand, a wonderful, wonderful photographer based out of both New York City and California. He's been published in numerous publications, including the New York Times, Fortune.com, Huffington Post, Forbes.com, and was a masterclass speaker at WPPI. Phil also travels abroad once a year and is photographed in over 30 countries. And Phil has set up his life in such a unique way that allows him to not feel overwhelmed and have plenty of time for himself with friends and to travel. And so I thought that having Phil on the show would bring, another new and unique perspective. And so the first topic, Melissa, that grabbed my attention was, in fact, how he has set his life up to really enjoy it. And again, to have a sense of calm and not get overwhelmed and have so much time to really enjoy and to have connection with friends and family and to see the world. And I liked some of the context in which he talked about it was in terms of really surprising himself, creating these environments where he can grow. Like as he said, I travel because I expose myself to scary things that are different, that helps me to grow, live, and learn. And, as Melissa and I get into this topic, it's not just about having to get out and travel all around the world once a year like he does. Not all of us are able to do that. But there are other ways. Like, for example, I want to give something that I talked about in the interview with Phil too, which was, and I need to get back to doing this. I haven't done it in a while. But every Thursday in the afternoon, I would take off, like basically 11 or 12 in the afternoon. I would just get in my car. I'd have some kind of like entertainment source now that we've got it on our cell phones and about movies, whatever. I'd grab some water, some snacks. I swear I would just get in my car, get to the highway and turn and go. And sometimes it would just be driving, listening to music. Sometimes I would see a movie or I'd go take a hike or all kinds of things. And I kind of planned, it's kind of funny, but I planned to be spontaneous. And I know, Melissa, you do this too. You're really good at that too.
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing. Phil talked about this at the very beginning of, I think, kind of going into this when he said, we all work really hard at designing these lives and having the ability to be our own bosses. And it's completely ridiculous if we're not enjoying that part of it, But I also feel like it allows us, if we take a step back, to be better for our clients, to be better for our business, our staff, our spouses, if we take back some of our time and we be really protective of that. And how you use that is up to you, right? So Philip does this. Allison, you interviewed recently of Allison event. She takes specific time to go out and go for a hike. And, sometimes I will go and go and go. And then I'll say, hey, I'm putting an out of office on for a week. I'm out of here. I'm going somewhere where there's just no cell phone service. And sometimes I found I've actually been able to really, acquire so much focus for myself and my business and my future when I can go and just internalize. And I think that there's a lot to that.
It opens up just these other channels within. And a lot of times, I would say a lot of the epiphanies that I get are when I have created that space where I am just, in a sense, being spontaneous or just out there. Or for me, being connected to nature creates that for me. And so I love going on hikes and taking a walk. And And yeah, you mentioned Allison and how she builds time in the middle of the day for hikes and other things. And by the way, that was last week. If you want to tune in, that was a great interview. And I know that over the past year and a half, all the interviews that I've done, I would say almost every single of these high-end planners and designers, and I know it's the same too with the photographers and even cake designers. Pretty much everyone that I've interviewed at that really super high level, they're very busy. They're running a million miles a minute, but they're also making time. I know that I was just on the phone with David Stark, and we're going to release a great episode on him next week. David was talking about a trip he took recently to Italy, Paris, and there was a third place. And he just kind of, lets go. I mean, he'll do some emails, of course. He still runs his company. But he will just, walk around and take pictures and be inspired. And I heard that from so many different people. Matthew Robbins does that. And it's a really pretty common technique. And so I think it's important that we all do make that time.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I know that, there's more things to talk about here, but I think the other piece of this is it is not just making time for vacation and personal. It is actually structuring your business and the way that you interact with clients and your frienders so that you're not feeling like every email is an emergency and that you're just tied to your inbox and you're just tied to your phone because everybody's expecting a response like right now. It creates so much stress to do that, and I mean, everybody knows I do, a lot of different social media consulting in the industry. And I get the question all the time, like, oh my God, is your phone just is it just stress you out with all the dings and the beeps and the this? And I said, you know what? I turn off all of my notifications. I don't subscribe to the fact that just because my phone is dinging means that I need to go into it and manage it. I will respond. Everybody knows I will respond. And Phillip is very similar in that, where he said, no, nothing's an emergency. I'll get back to you within 24 hours, and you can train your clients to really understand that. But what that's done is it's allowed Phillip to take a step back and get his personal time there, all the time. And that's important.
Yeah, and I would also recommend that you all listen to the full episode because there's so much more than what we're talking about right now about how he set up his life to be able to do this. And he also does travel once a year, as well as on an ongoing basis, but he goes abroad once a year by himself. And we're talking for a month at a time. And he does it very inexpensively. And also on a regular basis, he does not work at a frantic pace. He gives himself a lot of time off. And if you listen to the interview, he gives a lot of specifics about how he pulls that off financially. And I think it's really fascinating. Melissa, what else grabbed your attention?
You know what? Can we just talk about how Phillip is a networking king? I cannot believe how he is so able to wrap his brain around constantly communicating and thinking of people. And, for me personally, I value his friendship a lot. I'm a good friend of his. And he will reach out to me and say, hey, what about this goal you're working on? How's that going? And let's talk about that. How can I help you? And it's just so beautiful. And I cannot believe that he does this for so many people, but it's so cool and it's so powerful and it's so genuine and authentic from him. So, when he talks about all the things that he does networking wise, I think that there's a lot of space for that to come off kind of awkward and desperate if you don't actually mean it. And he really, really does. If you ever get to meet him at a conference, you will know what I'm talking about. He is just so genuine. So when you are networking and taking that advice from Phillip, make sure that you really, really do care, because that's where that heart and the core of this is coming out. It is so cool.
I want to mention some specific techniques that he talked about that I think we can all use. One of them, which I actually used right after I re-listened to this interview, was with text messages. He said that every month and a half or so, he would go through all of his texts and he would start from the bottom up and just kind of remind himself about relationships that he has, personal or business, but particularly in the business. And he'll notice that if he hadn't been in touch with someone in a while, he'll text them and he'll say, hey, I've been thinking about you. I know it's been a while. And he'll come up with some other ways. Like, for example, he mentioned he had heard my interview of Bryan Rafanelli, which was last year. I think we released it this year too. And he said that after he heard it, he doesn't know Bryan personally. He didn't have his text, But he did have the number of Bryan's number 2 person, Amanda. And so he wrote her and said, hey, Amanda, I just listened to the interview of Bryan on Andy's show, and he mentioned a few points about it, and she got back. And so, again, that brought him to mind, for Amanda, who is a person who will, bring in a lot of people into the company. And so I thought that was a great technique. And again, I actually, right after I listened, I did it with someone who has been on the show, and we had a great conversation going back and forth. The result of that, he also talked about, like Melissa was saying, he's very genuine in person, and he talked about how he really is interested in other people and he wants to listen, and it doesn't take him very long to find some kind of a common interest in how, and I love this, and it's happening here at Engage with me as well, is that rather than try to run into a whole bunch of people at one time at any kind of a networking event or anywhere else, he's just going to pick a couple. And rather than have these little short one-off conversations, he wants to sit there and have a deeper conversation with someone, like 15, 20 minutes. And so he's not frantic trying to, again, run into 10 people. If he has 1 or 2 really good conversations, he's happy. And I love that, because I do believe, and I find as I get more and more experience in the industry, that the deeper I go with people, the more I become friends on a sincere level. That is what really helps me to learn, and we share, and I even get hired. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And I just have to say, like, you can go into any conference, not just Engage, but you can go into any conference, whether it's, TSC or Wedding MBA or WPPI, like Phil speaks at often. You can go in there hoping to just be the person who's like just trying to work with everybody. But you can go in there with the bigger goal of finding like-minded people to connect with and collaborate with. And I think that, in my perspective, there is so much more power to that. And it creates lifelong friendships because it's actually true. And it's people who are more aligned in the way that they do business and they want to work with each other. And that is, more the long game. But I think it's more powerful and it's more sustainable than trying to talk to every single person in the room. So, just give yourself a bit of that little check when you walk into a networking event. Don't feel like that overwhelm of having to talk to every single person because, again, that's not where Phillip has found success. And it's not where I found success either. It's definitely about really, truly valuing people and what they do.
Well, and you mentioned the long game. I agree with that too. In the beginning when I was first out there, I felt like things had to happen so fast. And I found after years, there was one relationship in particular, actually it was Sean DeFreitas. He's a brilliant designer. I should have him on the show. He's out of Miami. And I had run to him at some kind of an event in DC. And it's a long story, but, I really barely knew him. He had come to check out one of my bands. And I said to him, listen, you're going to the airport tomorrow, right? He's like, yeah. I said, let me drop you off, And we ended up doing that, and we connected so much in that car. Long story short, we ended up producing together a high roller event at Bellagio in Vegas. I did Sean's biggest showcase of his life, a big thing at special events in Miami with Sound Connection. We did some other jobs, this incredible thing in Phoenix. I mean, talk about long game. And that was years and years. And I've had a lot of experiences like that. And one more technique I want to mention as we get ready to wrap up too, Phil talked about this, and it's something that I also use, is when you're meeting people, grab a business card and then not in front of them, but I do this and so does Phil. We'll write on the back of it a few, for the ones that we don't sit and have a 20-minute conversation with, write a few things on the back of the card to remind ourselves. And then I thought this was really fascinating. I did not do this. Phil said that every night after he has a networking event, or if he's at Engage at the end of the day, and he'll do this at midnight, he'll keep the cards in his pockets, and for the next couple of days until he responds, he'll keep these cards, and he will, like at midnight, whatever, he'll email the person and just say a little something. And why does he do it that night? Because it's still fresh, the feeling, the emotional connection of meeting somebody, because he's right. He said this, after a couple of days, it does start to fade. In addition to all of us meeting a ton of people, it starts to fade. And I loved that idea. I think that's a great one we could all consider using. And so to wrap up, I want to thank everyone for listening to today's episode of The Next Level and listening about Phil. Again, if you haven't listened to the full interview, go back and check it out. There's so much more to learn from. And Melissa, what do you got for us?
Oh, you guys, like I said, we are here at Engage, but we have a lot more fun coming up for you. Make sure you are subscribed to our mailing list on our website, theweddingbiz.com. There is a little field. There's also a pop-up. You can do that right there. Or if you are more of the Instagram type of person, you can also hit our link in our profile on Instagram, which is at Wedding Biz Show. There's a link there to sign up as well. Please sign up and stay subscribed.
That's right. And just one more thing I want to mention is that Melissa and I are very happy to take any kind of questions. If you have a challenge in your business or you have a story you want to get our opinion on, just really anything, we have so many resources, if not just ourselves, through all the people that I've interviewed. And so feel free to write us. You can direct message us at Wedding Biz Show. You can write me, Andy, at theweddingbiz.com, and we'll include it and give you a little plug on the show, too. So next week's episode is going to be a really wonderful re-release of David Stark, and we're going to have a next level episode with it. There is so much to get out of David's episode. David has scaled. He is one of the big ones. Planner, designer, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So much to learn from. It's like a master's class. So be sure to tune in next week on The Wedding Biz.